I started smoking cannabis daily when I was 14. This is a story of how it happened and how it affected me, and how it all ties into my larger addiction story. So like I said in my previous video, age 14 was a pretty good time in my life. It's a time of exploration, excitement, lots of fun in general. I was the thinnest and healthiest I had been up until that point. I was doing pretty well, but I was bored, I guess. I was into video games, but I wanted to explore those deeper psychonautic experiences. I was getting into spiritual books and stuff about nature of consciousness. I was into some intense stuff, and I had this drive to explore altered state of consciousness, to contemplate the universe through psychoactive substances. And that gooey green stuff was the first one that fell into my life when my best friend at the time started using it. And before that, I was all opposed. I was like, oh, that's stupid. I don't want to do that when I was 13. And then everything changed when I was 14. I started wanting to be cooler in all these different ways, but it was mostly about pure exploration. You see, my first psychoactive experience actually wasn't with cannabis. It was with salvia, which at that time, I don't know about now, but they were selling some strong stuff at the smoke shop. We all decided that we would rather have a one-time experience than to try cannabis just yet. And we went all in and had great experiences. Well, sort of. One kid ended up blacking out and getting up and bolting down the street, and we had to go after him. And then he tried to climb the fence, and then he was on top of the fence and he was like, where am I? How did I get here? But the reason that ties into cannabis is it was like the slow acceptance of, okay, we're gonna go further into this territory. My first time actually smoking cannabis was just about a month or two later, in the fall of my first year of high school. He brought it over to the house, first time ever, and he was like, you want to try this? And I was like, yeah, I want to try this. I'm really excited. So we snuck out and went down under the deck and soaked it up, and then snuck back in and washed our hands and went back into the dark of the living room and just zoned out while we watched these awesome movies back when we used to go to the rental store to get movies. That's what we would do back in 2010. Most people were done with rental movies by then, not us. My favorite video to watch with a few friends was Yellow Submarine, because I love the Beatles and this movie was so trippy. It's just way more fun to watch while stoned. We also listened to a lot of music. I liked to listen to the Grateful Dead a lot back then, and my other friend liked it. We would listen to this one song, Casey Jones, over and over again and really get into the sounds of the tones. So it endeared me to cannabis. A few months I was doing it pretty much every day. I would go home, smoke up, and then play video games, or do it while with friends, and I would hang out with friends a lot. I started hanging out with these stoner kids because that's who my other friends were hanging out with, and it seemed like those kinds of kids were the ones that I fit in with most. They liked my stories of my past, and we were all interested in getting high, so we had that in common at least. Not much else in common, but they weren't so bad. We used to sneak off before school and go to the trail like across the street and go stand in circles and pass cigarettes and pipes around, and almost got caught a bunch of times. Learned how to run away, learned how to hide and scatter. It was an adrenaline rush, but it was scary, and it could have ended badly, and it did end badly for one of my friends. I met a lot of good people, and we were all interested in a lot of the same kinds of stuff. They were mostly into rap music and stuff like that. There were a good number of those kids that also were into the same kind of bluegrass type music and reggae and ska music and stuff like that, punk rock and G.G. Allen that I was into. I had a lot in common with them because they were also into spiritual stuff. They were kind of like country hippies. We were also all into Terrence McKenna and exploring psychedelics, and that drove us to experiment with a lot of different things at a young age. I was living on the edge and playing with fire. Some of the biggest influences with cannabis that I've had have come from the people that it's brought into my life. And it wasn't until I was around that age that I realized that I had a person that's been close to me my whole life that's actually been deeply involved in that, and I had no idea. So that created a bond with us, and it created a bond with all these different people. There were some bad people that I was introduced to, some people that I still don't trust or like, but there were mostly good people that I have good memories with. We went on a lot of scary adventures. A few people that I was friends with put me in some dangerous, sketchy positions and lost my trust, but I managed to get through that all, and I learned a lot. But you know, as I got older, I continued to use it every day, and I progressed to hash, and my tolerance got higher. I started baking edibles, you know, and eating those in the morning and in the middle of the day, along with the morning bong rip and the afternoon bong rip and the evening bong rip. And meanwhile, trying to keep up with advanced classes. I was always at the top science class. I was trying to continue up this path of learning about biology, and at this point, I couldn't keep up with it anymore because I was taking too many classes and I was taking too many advanced classes, and the homework was too much. I was way too stressed. I was depressed about not having a girlfriend. I was depressed about all the chemicals I had learned about. See, when I was around 15, I started looking into all these different chemicals that were in all the food products I had been fed throughout my life. Junk food, frozen foods, microwave stuff, household things like sprays and fragrances and soaps and stuff like that I had been exposed to my whole life. And I look at some of the other people, the peers that I'd grown up with, and their parents had protected them from that and given them alternatives and organic food and stuff. And I realized how it had affected me. From all the research that I had done, it is very likely that I had gone through a precocious puberty, and the doctor agrees with me. A precocious puberty is an early release of sex hormones that stunts growth and causes puberty to start early. So I was bummed about that, very, very insecure about it, because I'm 5'3.5", and I had been the same height since I was 12, and I never grew after that. But I had no confidence with women. I saw myself as inferior. But just a couple years before, I was popular with the girls. I guess as I got older and didn't get any taller, I became lower on the social status, and people were bullying me. So I ended up getting like too depressed. They forced me to get counseling at Kaiser, and when I was there, they tried to drug test me and convince me to go on SSRIs, and I was like, drug tests? And I failed the drug test, and I had to come up with some excuse. Oh yeah, I ate a brownie accidentally and I didn't realize that it had that stuff in it, and I'm sorry, you know, and they just had to take my word for it. But I didn't let it happen again. I threw a fit next time I was in there. I'm not gonna take your effing drug test anymore. Except I said the word, and I said it kind of loud in the lobby. I slammed it on the desk, the piece of paper they wanted me to sign. And I was only 15 and a half at that time. And they banned me from the place. And as an alternative, I was able to do private counseling where they didn't drug test. So having a fit ended up working in my favor that time. Just keep that in mind. I decided to do independent study for a while, and I had actually slowed down the smoking and switched to the Magic Flight box, vaping box, as I was on independent study for the first part of junior year. I had fun doing the homework by myself, and I watched a lot of educational documentaries in my off time, and I would go out on long walks and use the Magic Flight box and think about the universe. I started the new high school about mid-October of junior year, because I was only in independent study for a couple of months. So I got acquainted, and I decided that I was having trouble breathing. My eyes were always watering. I was yawning and coughing because of all the hash I was smoking. It was bad. So I decided to stop, and I started watching all these like quit weed videos and like supportive advice. And I tried to stop it for the start of the next semester, and I went about a month, and I was jonesing so hard that I was snapping at people. And I snapped at this one guy who was disrespectful to me, and then he made a big scene out of it in the middle of class, and everybody was taking his side because he was just higher in the social status than me. I was just feeling really on edge all the time. So I ended up starting to do it again, and I went back into it, kept doing it every day up through senior year, which is when I started drinking. So the weed didn't really do it for me. I had to transition to something harder, and I kept using the edibles and the cannabis because I liked the effects of crossfaded, because I didn't have to have as much of either one, but I still went hard on both. was the only thing that gave me enough confidence to like talk to women that I had a crush on or be like funny and social. And it worked because I think I was doing a little bit better as far as people's opinions of me at that time, but it did eventually go sour because there was some conflicts with different people. I can't understand why they did certain things. Maybe they were jealous I was getting some attention, but I ended up becoming a loner and super depressed. And I continued to smoke weed all the way through high school, into the first year of community college. And I think around 21 is when I slowed it down a little bit. And that's when I decided to quit everything that last semester because I could feel that my brain was foggy and I was slower than the other people in my accounting class. And I had failed microecon that semester because the first half of the whole semester I was barely trying because I was so depressed and I hated my body so much and comparing myself to other guys and wishing I had a girlfriend and just staying single the whole time and feeling really bad about myself. I had to drown out those feelings so that I could focus on work at all. And eventually it just couldn't hold it back. I was trying to build a wall to hold back the rising waters of my emotions and insecurities, but the wall can only do so much before it breaks. The water rises high enough. Eventually, I just was getting wasted and not feeling any better anyway. But I kept doing it until halfway through that semester. It wasn't enough to salvage the class, but it was right before my grandfather passed away. And my grandfather raised me like a dad ever since I was 1 or 2 years old. They raised me, took me from my parents because my parents were also struggling with addiction and mental health. So it was a good thing I quit right before then because right around the time I quit, we got the news of his cancer, fatal. And it was good that I was able to not stifle those emotions because I needed to process them without getting intoxicated, which I did. And I showed him the love and attention that I wanted to show him before he passed away, and I'm satisfied with that. And that was probably the best reason for me to stop. And I continued to stop for a while, and then I picked it back up again a little bit here and there, but I think I only did it once every 2 weeks, and I was using a vape pen. It was really strong for me. I was in college and I would go on campus, going to my car, doing that, and then wandering the campus and observing people and society, and then going and reading my textbook, seeing really deeply into marketing, supply chain management, operations. The cannabis helped with that. It helped my creative energy. At the end of college, I started to use it more frequently because I was enjoying doing it while playing games. And once I graduated, I got involved in the cannabis industry, and all of a sudden I had easy access to it, even beyond what I had before, and eventually decided to cut back on that too and only do it once a week again. And that's where I've been for the last few years. From the beginning of 2020 till now, I've been doing cannabis once or twice a week for creative reasons. But I'm over the age of 21. I can legally use this. I'm not gonna make any medical claims. Overall, I think the biggest way that cannabis has influenced me in my life is through the shaping of my worldview as a combination of the memories that I've had through the people I've interacted with over my life because of cannabis. The altering in my state of consciousness has created new perspectives. The cons is how easy it is to just start doing it every day, and then it becomes a time sink. What I regret is all the smoking, because cannabis or not, my lungs were worse off after taking fat snaps all day for years, giant backwood blunts, smoking cigarettes, all kinds of stuff, but I didn't smoke cigarettes as much as cannabis. So I know that it's not good for your lungs, but it's also possible to be in an altered state of consciousness for such a long period of time that you could start to enter psychosis. I think I was on the way to that point. There's also the possibility that you could just use it for the first time or the second time and you might just freak out. Might do something you regret, like call the ambulance or something. There are some rare cases where some people can just go out of their minds and end up in a mental hospital for the next few days. but that's pretty rare. Personally, I'm not gonna say that it's had an overall positive effect on my life, because I don't wanna be glorifying it in any way, but I'll just leave it at that. If you enjoyed this video, hit the subscribe button below and hit that notification bell so you can be notified of when I upload a new video. And hit the like button so more people can be educated about these kinds of things.
According to YouTube's guidelines, videos that attempt to educate are documentary by nature and do not glorify the use of drugs, and both abide by community safety guidelines and are eligible for monetization. The following video does not glorify the use of drugs. Instead, it attempts to be non-biased while delivering vital life-saving information disguised as entertainment.